And welcome back to On The Grid Podcast, Season 4, Episode 22. And we are back for the Hungarian Grand Prix race review. I am joined, as ever, by my co-host, Adrian. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. To say that Ferrari had a strong finish finally, was good to see. But yeah, it was a very interesting race. We'll obviously delve into it a little bit later on, but a lot of controversy surrounding the Hungarian Grand Prix. The McLaren camp is probably split into two at the moment, but without further ado, let's actually talk about the race and what happened.
Yeah, so we'll get on to that in a little while. But first up, we'll talk about qualifying because yet again, Sergio Perez has absolutely binned it and cost his team a lot of money. And he's crashed in Q1 and ended up qualifying 16th. When do we drop this whole act of saying, yeah, that's enough is enough? He's clearly not Red Bull material.
I think Red Bull drop it straight after the summer break. After the summer break, if Sergio Perez is still on a Red Bull, then I will be actually amazed. There's already hints that Liam Lawson will be probably an RB driver next season, as Daniel Ricciardo's contract isn't being extended, and that probably paves the way for only one man to jump into the Red Bull seat, which is Daniel Ricciardo. To say that Perez has been doing a superb job at Red Bull is ludicrous. When he signed that 2-year contract just before the Monaco Grand Prix, everybody's thoughts were, "What on earth is happening here?" There's a clear disparity between Max Verstappen, a three-time world champion, and Sergio Perez. Obviously they're not going to have the same machinery. They're not going to have the same car, especially with the upgrades that Red Bull had this weekend. But when you're making mistake after mistake after mistake, and especially binning it for the second weekend in a row in qualifying, you know something's wrong. You know something's not right.
Yeah, one of the other talking points in Q1 was that George Russell was eliminated by just over a tenth of a second. And I think that from what it seems like, it's more of a blunder on Mercedes' part because they didn't actually give him enough fuel to complete as many laps as possible, which I just find baffling in conditions which are wet, which are quickly drying. You need to put as many laps on as possible. You need to be on track basically at all times. The only times you're not is to get a fresh set of tyres and to refuel. Other than that, you should always be on track in those circumstances because of the level of track evolution. So absolutely baffling on that one. What do you make of George Russell eliminated in Q1? He's had a fairly strong recent form in qualifying. Finished first, fourth, third, first leading up to this, but not to be in Hungary.
I think actually a few teams, well, I say a few teams, but George Russell was definitely caught out alongside the two Alpines who, due to like you say, the track evolution and going from a wet track to a very much a dry track, the conditions were a little bit hard to gauge, but I reckon whatever the kind of risk you put on with soft tires on a drying track, you still have to make that gamble if you are willing to kind of get yourself through to Q2, especially with the track drying so quickly. And in Hungary, like we saw, the track temperatures were so high, the track dried really quickly. So, yeah, it's a bit. Even George said on the radio that it was a bit of a blunder from his perspective. But I don't think he can be too disheartened with what happened. He did kind of recover in the end to get himself back into the points, but it's probably one of them rare blunders that you're going to have. And in this case, George Russell was to pay the price for a drying track and not being out there at the right time at the optimal condition.
Yeah, moving on now into Q2 and the other three drivers eliminated in Q1 was Guan Yu Zhou, Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. That Alpine looks back to being an absolute tractor. And Guan Yu Zhou, is anybody surprised he's been knocked out in Q1? He's only had one qualifying session where he's got out of Q1. So no surprises there. Moving on to Q2, And I've got to put out a special mention for Logan Sargent because he got through. He did scrape through into Q2, but he qualified just a tenth behind Alex Albon. Albon 13th, Logan Sargent 14th. Is it a sign of his form improving? And after that, is it too little, too late?
The simple answer to that is no. He's had obviously Sergio Perez behind him, binned it. George Russell, Joe Guan Yu, Esteban Ocon, and Pierre Gasly were the other four drivers that were just not there at the right time at the optimal conditions, and Logan Sargent kind of capitalised on that. So he got himself through purely on that basis. Those five drivers weren't there to capitalise on other people's errors when the track was in the right condition. But you can't take away from him. He's outqualified Kevin Magnussen, which I mean you don't rarely see because the Haas drivers have been doing so well. And like you say, only 10th behind Alex Albon in the end. So it's not awful in qualifying for Logan Sargent. But I reckon the Williams pair kind of made sure that they were out on track when the track was at the optimal condition, and then in Q2 they had no hope, especially with the two McLarens, Max Verstappen, the two Ferraris, with Lewis Hamilton, the two Aston Martin, the two RBs. I don't think you can compete much with them. So it shows a sign of improvement, but it shows that Williams obviously had a plan to have Logan Sargent out there at the right time and with the track of the right condition so he could make it through to Q2.
Yeah, as you said, Kevin Magnussen qualified down in 15th with his teammate Nico Hulkenberg in 11th and Valtteri Bottas in 12th, which is a good effort considering how critical we've been of that Sauber all season long and how bad it's been. The fact he's managed to put it into 12th. And then moving on to Q3, so the V-car pair of Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo qualifying 9th and 10th. Yuki Tsunoda had a bit of a nasty smash towards the end, and there's a little bit of controversy around that because when the red flag was pulled out, Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll were caught up by the marshals and told to go into Parc Ferme, despite the fact there was 2 minutes left of the session. Along with the fake F1 cars in the Apex GP cars for the new Formula One movie, they were taken to one side, so were not able to run again. It's a massive blunder from the FIA and everybody involved in that. What do you make of it?
I did see a video circulating on social media of how fuming Fernando Alonso was, chucking all of his things, his hat, his coat. Because like you rightfully pointed, there was 2 and a bit minutes left in Q3. I was supposed to be picking my brother up from work, but I had to wait because there was 2 minutes left. Anything could have happened in that qualifying session. But unfortunately nothing changed, so I could have easily just got on my way and kind of got on with my everyday life. But yeah, it's a bit poor. To say that it's a multi-billion business and they actually can't get anything concretely correct because we've had so many blunders in the past couple of years, and it's just a blunder after a blunder. Like if you don't see a FIA blunder during a race, then it's clearly a good race. But with I don't think I've seen many qualifying blunders. This one surprised me a lot. Probably surprised everyone, especially Fernando Alonso, who's fuming. But I don't think you can. I don't think Aston Martin were there to challenge any of the top six. I think they were a little bit behind, and I think seventh and eighth is probably justified. So I don't think they would have gotten any higher, but it's just poor from the FIA.
Absolutely, those two qualified down in 7th and 8th. Charles Leclerc in 6th, Lewis Hamilton 5th, and Carlos Sainz 4th. But it was really the top three that stole the show, just half a tenth, separating Lando Norris in first, Oscar Piastri, and Max Verstappen in third. Incredible qualifying. McLaren seem to have the best car, as we said quite a few times now, and they're doing it at different tracks, which I think is very impressive. There's another pole position for Lando Norris. And you've got to think if this continues, they're in a good position to not only challenge but to win the constructors, right?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, for Lando Norris, it kind of helped that Max Verstappen was finishing his lap, and he got a little bit of a toe, which did help him gain those extra hundredths on Oscar Piastri and deny him of the first pole position. But yeah, McLaren are definitely the quickest car on the grid. Red Bull are slowly fading down. Mercedes are bringing the fight. Ferrari and Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz are trying to stick in there. I think a couple of upgrades will be needed over the summer break to kind of solidify their place in the top three. But so far so good for McLaren. They are hunting Red Bull. I don't think there's I don't know how many points is in it. I think it's about 50 or 60. I'm not 100% guaranteed sure how many points are in the Constructors' Championship battle. But it's certainly going to be a lot tighter, especially with the likes of Sergio Perez not performing to his usual standards. So, with Max Verstappen only being able to score the boatload of points, McLaren are definitely within a shout of stealing the Constructors' Championship. And we already said it before, if Red Bull don't get the Constructors' Championship, we know whose fault it is. It only lies on the shoulders of Sergio Perez. So with a team like Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, I think McLaren are in it to win it.
Yeah, so the gap between Red Bull and McLaren is 51 points. And you got to think if Perez continues to stutter and score very minimal points, that McLaren have a chance competing with two cars in Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Since Australia, Lando Norris has only qualified outside the top three on 3 occasions. So what's that? 11 races, and only 3 outside the top 3. So incredible consistency there. And like we said, Max Verstappen in third place. So we'll move on to our 1 to 10 driver ratings. So we'll kick things off with the man who won his first race, Oscar Piastri. So qualified in second and finished first. And it is a 4 out of 10 from me. I'm only joking, of course. It's a 10 out of 10. Incredible performance. He got the better start, got Norris into turn one, and then controlled the pace, really. You know, he's often struggled with his tyre wear since joining F1, but he seemed to have that under control today. Oh, sorry, on Sunday. And looked very comfortable. Obviously, we'll get onto that controversy later on, but he done everything that was asked for him, beat every challenge that was poised. And in the end, it was a very, very good performance and a deserved first victory.
Yeah, I've also gone with a 4 out of 10. I mean the 10 out of 10. The only thing that really kind of bugs me is that McLaren obviously had that little bit of a blunder with Lando Norris, and they kind of got into an emotional anecdote and stuff like that, and it it kind of took away from Oscar Piastri's kind of first win in Formula One. He's obviously become the 7th winner this season, which is the most I think we've seen since 2012 or something like that. It's mental. But yeah, it took away from his victory. It's just it should have been Oscar pitting first because he was obviously leading, and he should have had preferential treatment. But obviously they pitted Lando Norris first, and then Oscar Piastri pitted, and then Lando Norris was just dropping him and dropping him and dropping him, and at one point it was 6.5 seconds, and you're thinking, right, Lando Norris is nailed on to win here. And then you hear the radios, Will Joseph just constantly telling Lando Norris to slow down and let Oscar Piastri through because of that better start. But without that, you can't take away from Oscar Piastri. He did get the better start. He was leading from the off. It was just that mid point of a race to the end of a race where McLaren kind of ruined it for Oscar Piastri completely. But without a shadow of a doubt, it's probably one of the easiest 10 out of 10s we're getting. He's getting this season because it was a brilliant race, a race winner, and actually the first Formula 3 graduate to get a race victory. So there's another stat for you guys. But yeah, 10 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, like you said, you listen to his team radio after the race, and you wouldn't have thought it's his first win in Formula One. He's apologising for messing it up in his own words and making it more difficult than it had to be, which is terrible for someone to experience on their first win. Because it's deserved as well. You know, there's been a couple of opportunities. He's been thereabouts. He could have had a win or two last season. But obviously Verstappen was just far too good. And it wasn't to be. Moving on now to his teammate, Lando Norris. So he qualified on pole and finished second. I've gone for an 8 out of 10. I don't know if this is what's happened. It's skewed my opinion a little bit. I can see your face. I don't think it's crazy. Maybe it should be a 9, but it's never ever a 10 out of 10 from Lando Norris. It's embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing for a driver of his level and his standard to act in that way is an absolute it's shocking. This should never have happened. He's taken the spotlight from his teammate completely, and everybody making out as if he's a good guy for giving up the position deluded, because he's only given it up because he's been forced to, basically. And not to mention, actually, he was getting dropped by Piastri. Piastri was pulling away from him until he made that mistake. And this whole talk about the pit stop strategy and they had to pit him to cover up the undercut, they couldn't have been too concerned, McLaren, because they pit Lando Norris 4 laps after Lewis Hamilton pit. So they really couldn't have been that concerned about the undercut. Otherwise, they would have pit him the lap after. So there was plenty of time to maneuver it around. It's an absolute disgrace. But in the end, it's still a very good performance from Lando Norris. He's got 18 valuable points. He's gained on Verstappen, which is also a very weird point people seem to be making. He's in a championship fight. The largest difference that a driver has overcome to win the championship is about 40 points. And that was done by Max Verstappen in 2022 when he DNF'd 2 of the first 3 races. After Australia, the gap from Verstappen to Leclerc was about 40 points, which, of course, he overturned comfortably by the end of the season. But this whole talk that Lando Norris is in a championship fight when he's 76 points behind Max Verstappen with 11 races to go is absolutely absurd.
Okay, I think you've gone very harsh on Lando Norris there, purely because I think if you are leading, would you do the same? Would you let a race lead go like that? I don't think. Let me finish my point before you start talking. Okay, would you see? I mean, we've seen people like Lewis Hamilton give up podiums for Valtteri Bottas at Hungary. But would you see Sir Lewis Hamilton give up a race victory when they are the closest challenger to Max Verstappen? I don't think you would. I don't think you would. You want to gain as many points in the Drivers' Championship as possible. I see where McLaren are coming from, and Will Joseph. I totally understand where they're coming from with that it's a team game. Oscar's going to help you, etc. XYZ. But why pick Lando Norris first and then Oscar Piastri second when Oscar should have technically the preferential treatment because he's leading? That's all I'm saying. I've not given Lando Norris a 10 out of 10. I've given him a 9 out of 10 because he should be winning that race comfortably without that mistake. But I just don't think McLaren have put Lando Norris in the kind of in a they've made him look like a villain, shall we say, with all the radio messages, etc. It's not embarrassing. It's just they wanted the best for Oscar Piastri. They completely got it wrong. The pit stop strategy should have favored Oscar Piastri. That's all I'm saying. McLaren got it wrong. None of their drivers got it wrong. It was the strategies that were wrong, and we saw what unfolded. But all I'm saying, Lando Norris, 9 out of 10. He may look like a villain. He may look like a good guy in other people's perspectives, but you've just got to be neutral and think about it. Would you give up a race lead if you're leading by 6-7 seconds? All I'm saying.
I tell you what I would have done in that situation is I would have let Oscar Piastri through immediately. And it's Martin Brundle's actually made a very good point. He put a blog out as part of Sky Sports and dissecting the race and talking about it. He made a very good point, is that Lando Norris should have let Oscar Piastri through immediately because it was clear that, that was something that had to happen, is that Oscar Piastri had to get given the lead again. And then he has about 19, 20 laps to then get back past Oscar Piastri. And judging off that final stint, when he pulled out a 3 or 4 second gap over the course of about 10 laps, he would have been able to do that. He would have been able to overtake him. And then our whole point, our whole argument would be completely obsolete because we would be saying, what a overtake from Lando Norris to win the race. And he would have won the race because he was a lot quicker on that final stint than Oscar Piastri. Piastri obviously struggled with his tyres and whatnot. So that's what I would have done. But I go back to my point. There is no title fight. There is a constructors' title fight because McLaren are only 51 points behind. In fact, Ferrari are only 67 points behind. So I can see a title fight there. There is a 76-point gap between Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. That's not going to be any different if Lando Norris gets an extra 7 points here today. In 11 races, he's got to gain 7 points per race. Lando Norris has only gained points on Max Verstappen. Hungary was the first time he's gained points on Max Verstappen since winning in Miami. Every other race since then, Verstappen has extended his championship lead against Norris. So, this, like I said, this idea that he's in a championship fight is completely absurd, and it's ludicrous. But anyway, I digress. Moving on now, and this will be a lot more of a nicer topic to talk about. Lewis Hamilton qualified in 5th and finished 3rd. I've gone for a 9 out of 10. It is bordering on a 10 out of 10 because I don't know what more he could have done. He battled brilliantly against Verstappen, defended fantastic. Until Verstappen decided to use his old trick, by absolutely dive bombing him from a mile away. No intention to make the corner, just to either crash into Hamilton or get past. And we'll get onto that, but the fact he didn't get a penalty is very confusing. But all in all, a very, very good performance. I don't think Mercedes quite had the pace this weekend. Certainly not on the level of Red Bull and McLaren. And I think their pace was fairly similar to Ferrari, but he managed to beat both of them. So that's a good result. So yeah, 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this for the first time, and it's rare I say this, but I actually tip my hat to Lewis Hamilton, because he actually helped us get a 4th place. So thank you, Lewis, for helping Charles get a 4th place because otherwise I don't think that would have been a feasible result for Ferrari. It would have been a 5th and a 6th place finish, but was on the cards. But with Verstappen going off track, it helped little Charlie Ball get himself a 4th place finish. So thank you, Sir Lewis Hamilton, for that. But yeah, how that went down as a racing incident, I don't know. They were I believe they were overtaking Alex Albon into turn 1. And then Lewis went back onto the racing line, and then Max dive bombed Albon and went down the inside of Albon and then down the inside of Hamilton. But because he didn't see Hamilton turning, he outbraked himself and powered straight into the side of his car, which surely that warrants a penalty, does it not? Because you're not making the corner and you're plowing into the side of someone's car. I don't get it. But yeah, I've given Lewis Hamilton a 9 out of 10. Very, very good performance. Wasn't on the pace to catch the 2 McLarens, but yeah, a brilliant performance and the 200th podium for Sir Lewis Hamilton. So he's completed 2 centuries now. Can he push for a 3rd century? Who knows?
Lewis Hamilton is really in a battle for 2nd place in the Drivers' Championship because he's only 64 points behind Lando Norris. So actually, he's closer than Lando Norris is to Max Verstappen. So, the battle is on for 2nd place for Lewis Hamilton. Moving on now to a topic I'm sure you will enjoy. We've got Charles Leclerc qualified in 6th and finished 4th. It's a 9 out of 10 as well. It's a return to form, and it's a much needed return to form as well for Charles Leclerc. Since Monaco, he has not had a good time of it. But look, very, very solid, kept up with the front 4 in the first stint. Maybe he could have got past Hamilton. If he got 3rd, I think I would have given him a 10 out of 10, especially from where that Ferrari's been for the last few races. But a very good effort from him. Finished 4th. Inherited it a little bit, luckily, through Verstappen ruining his chances. But, it's a very good performance from Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, finally a happy topic for myself because, like you mentioned, Charles Leclerc has not had the best of times since the Monaco Grand Prix victory. And he's finally got himself a good haul of points, in a P4 finish. Yeah, it was lucky. Don't get me wrong. Max Verstappen didn't help himself at all. Didn't give himself any favors at all by plowing into the side of Lewis Hamilton and losing a position, but. Charles Leclerc was there to capitalize and get the P4 finish. So yeah, like you say, a good return to form. I don't think he had the pace to overtake Lewis Hamilton. I know the two were on differing strategies and on different tires, but I think the Mercedes just had an inch over the Ferrari, and I don't think Charles Leclerc could have got the move done. But without a shadow of a doubt, another 9 out of 10 handed.
Next up is Max Verstappen. He obviously qualified in third and finished fifth. Now, this is going to be a controversial one. I've gone for a 5 out of 10 because that was it. Realistically, it should have been a comfortable podium and he should have challenged McLaren's. He should have been on the scene, on the tail of Piastri to make any sort of switch difficult for McLaren. Make it difficult for them and make them think about him rather than happy with the 1-2, easy done, and worrying about themselves. He should have been in the picture himself. I can't forgive him for that crash because at the end of the day, he should have got a 5 or 10 second penalty, which would have bumped him down to sixth. Whenever you qualify in third and you finish down in fifth and sixth, it's not enough. I know the Red Bull wasn't the quickest car at the weekend, but how many times have we praised him for doing things that putting that car in places that we didn't think it could be? So it's only right that we should criticize him when he has an off day.
Yeah, I think I've gone with a 7 personally. Because I think even it's a bit childish that he's gone on the radio and said to Giampiero Lambiasi that he's trying to kind of like he's trying to get back where Red Bull needed after they kind of messed up his strategy. I wasn't going to use. I was thinking of using the explicit words and the exact quote that he used, but I'm not going to because explicit free and that. But yeah, I've gone with a 7. It's in qualifying. It's bare margins. And in the race, if he overtakes Hamilton, he goes after the two McLaren drivers. But instead, he decided to go back to his old ways, and we saw what happened. I've gone with a 7. I think it was still a good performance, but that, yeah, that crash kind of dropped him down probably two ratings. He could have easily finished on the podium, but instead decided to take the wrong route of doing things and lost a place in the process. So losing 2 places and kind of finishing smack bang in the middle of the points, warrants a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I think the disappointing thing for Verstappen is he's got 2 championships to credit Red Bull with. 2022, 2023. He has been given absolutely phenomenal car. He's been given such an amazing car. And it's all right giving them credit at the time when the car is absolutely unbelievable and one of the quickest Formula One cars that we've ever seen, but doesn't mean you can berate them as he has when the car isn't to that level. So you can say it's just being competitive, it's sportsman, it's trying to drive the team on, but at the end of the day, you just sound ungrateful to the team, and that you're happy to accept it the good times, but when it gets a little bit tougher, you kick off and you throw your toys out the pram. That's what it comes across as to, I'm sure, to a lot of people. Moving on now to Carlos Sainz, who qualified in fourth and finished sixth. I'm giving him an 8 out of 10. I don't think it was quite on Charles Leclerc's level. He got a bad start, which knocked him down a few places. So you had Hamilton and Leclerc got through. I think one of the Aston Martins did as well. I think Fernando Alonso was actually. But Sainz battled back through. But by that point, he was a little bit too far off to really challenge the cars ahead. Should have finished fifth, in my opinion. I think Verstappen should have got a penalty. He was only 1 second behind him. But yeah, good effort from Sainz and some valuable points for Ferrari.
Yeah, I was contemplating between a 7 or an 8, but I think I will go for an 8 because I don't think he had a bad of a race as Verstappen's, especially with the Verstappen effects, as we all know, in full flow. But yeah, it's for the first time probably in a long time we're seeing Carlos Sainz not fifth but sixth, and you almost feel weird giving him an 8 out of 10 with him not finishing fifth. So it's a bit of a weird one, but I think Charles Leclerc was the lead Ferrari driver of that weekend in Hungary, and it was evident because Carlos Sainz was lacking a little bit. I mean, he was catching him in the second stint. Carlos was catching Charles in the second stint, but he wasn't able to get on the scene of Verstappen's crash with Hamilton to overtake Verstappen. But like you say, if Verstappen did get that penalty, he would have easily gotten a fifth place finish and probably got himself like an 8.5 out of 10. But I've settled with an 8, and I think it's still a good performance. Ferrari, good haul of points for the first time in a long time. So I don't think you can discredit him too much.
Absolutely. Sergio Perez up next, and he qualified down as 16th, as we said, and finished up in 7th. Now, we criticise him where it's due, so it's all only fair that we give him his credit where it's due as well. I've gone for a 7 out of 10. He only finished sort of about 15 seconds behind Verstappen. I know Verstappen had a messy race, but that's still good going, especially when you're qualifying as far down the order as he did. When I think he started on the hards and made that strategy stick, and overcut quite a few cars, especially on that second stint. So it's a good effort from him. And yeah, 7 out of 10.
I've decided to go with an 8 out of 10 for Sergio Perez because I think it's the first race in a very long time where we're kind of finally being able to praise Sergio Perez. But the thing is, he's starting from so far back. You've got to sort of give him a bit of a higher rating because of the amount of overtakes he's made during the race. And with a strategy that Red Bull did implement for Sergio Perez, it enabled him to kind of finish inside the points. Maybe if Max Verstappen had the sort of strategy that Sergio Perez had, maybe we could have seen a completely different race winner. Who knows? But yeah, Sergio Perez, it was a good performance. Don't get me wrong, he shouldn't have made that mistake in qualifying. But saw him crash out in the start P16, but he recovered well, finished inside the points, gained himself a few valuable points and made up 9 places. So yeah, 8 out of 10.
George Russell up next, qualified 17th and finished 8th. I've gone for a 7 out of 10 as well. Same as I went for Perez because I thought there were two good drives back through the field. I think Red Bull had slightly the best strategy, which helped Perez. But Russell got quickest lap, so that is an extra point for him. But yeah, good drive back through the field. Should never have been in that situation, but it wasn't his fault necessarily. But you do have to take that into account with the grade. So yeah, 7 out of 10, I think is fair.
Yeah, so exactly the same as Sergio Perez. I gave George Russell an 8 out of 10. I don't think I could have distinguished differently from the two drivers. Both made their way through the field, both made the same amount of overtakes, and like you say, Red Bull just had that edge over the Mercedes with a more favourable strategy. So both of them deserved of an 8 out of 10 and a good battle through the field for the two of them.
And it is Yuki Tsunoda up next, qualified in 10th and finished 9th. I've gone for an 8 out of 10. A very, very good performance from him. And he continues to impress and he continues to show why, he should be in that Red Bull seat for next year. I don't really have too much more to add, but yeah, fantastic drive. And probably what you've got to say is maybe the 6th quickest car, maybe 7th. It fluctuates a lot in that midfield, but he's doing a very good job in it.
So for Yuki Tsunoda, I've not gone with an 8. I've actually gone with a 7. He's had a good qualifying session, but he did bin it. He's obviously cost his team a lot of money, and the cost cap is costly. So if he did bin it, it would have been a nailed on 8 out of 10. But obviously, he still managed to finish inside the points. It's not as good as the performance that we saw from obviously Sergio Perez and George Russell making it through the field. He still made it inside the points, but I think just that qualifying crash just kind of leaves a sour taste in his mouth, and especially a sour taste in the mouths of his team principal and his team. So yeah, I've gone with a 7 out of 10. I might be a bit critical on it, but yeah, 7 out of 10.
Up next, the final point scorer, Lance Stroll. So he qualified up in 8th and finished 10th. So I've gone for a 6 out of 10 because he should not have finished in the points because he was given 10th place by Fernando Alonso and they refused to give the place back. He was given 10th place on the basis that he was going to try and go after Tsunoda, try and overtake him and get 9th place. Couldn't overtake him and didn't give the place back. So he stole a point from Fernando Alonso. So, Alonso's charity work is done for the year. He's done his Make-A-Wish help. And yeah, we'll move on.
Yeah, I think especially after what happened with Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, this was another one where team orders were just at the peak level. Lance Stroll, Daddy's Cash versus Fernando El Padre Alonso. Yeah, Stroll, you're a madman, mate. Fernando Alonso is probably going to smash into you just to make him feel better. And yeah, you're not getting any more points this season because I don't think you deserve it. I've still given him a 6 out of 10 because he still made it in the points, had a good qualifying. He's obviously not on Yuki Tsunoda's level. He's obviously not on the level of any of the top eight. He got a top 10 finish purely because of Fernando Alonso's charity. But like you said, Fernando Alonso's charity is done here. And Lance Stroll is probably never going to finish inside the points, and he's probably going to cry to his father to say that he needs more money and he wants a better car. So 6 out of 10.
Talking of Fernando Alonso, he's up next. So he qualified in 7th and finished 11th. I've gone for a 5 out of 10. I know he's given up the position and he should have finished 10th, but it was an uncharacteristic day for Fernando Alonso, and we've had a few more of those recently than we'd like to, really. But it's still, it's in the mix. But yeah, I think he should be getting a couple of points here.
I've actually gone with another 6 out of 10 here. I don't think I could have displaced the two Aston Martin drivers. Fernando Alonso, like you said, he gave up the position to Lance Stroll, which should have never happened. He should have got the place back and he should have finished with 1 point to his name. But Lance Stroll is Lance Stroll and he's a greedy little bugger. And he decided to keep that point. Yeah, I don't think I could displace the two Aston Martin drivers too much. Very good qualifying, but the race pace just kind of fell away, especially with Sergio Perez and George Russell making their way through the field. So, yeah, it was either Lance Stroll or Fernando Alonso getting that last point, and Lance Stroll decided to keep it. So, 6 out of 10 for both Aston Martin drivers. A pretty average race from the two of them.
Next up in 12th place is Daniel Ricciardo. He qualified 9th and, as he said, finished 12th. I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Daniel Ricciardo. Thought he was very, very unlucky. He got absolutely done over by strategy. Should have been in the points or in the mix for points at least. But it wasn't to be through no fault of his own. So it's a 6 out of 10 from me.
Yeah, another 6 out of 10. Especially with Daniel Ricciardo starting in 9th, you were hoping, is this going to be another Daniel Ricciardo points finish? But unfortunately, it wasn't, purely on the basis of strategy and stuff like that. But yeah, it's one of them races where it's a little bit unfortunate, a little bit unlucky, and it got away from him. So yeah, it's another 6 out of 10, and it's another performance that kind of, it didn't disappoint, but it was just one of them average ones, really.
Yeah, I think Daniel Ricciardo was quite upset on the team radio with his team for that shocking strategy. Nico Hulkenberg up next, qualified 11th and finished 13th. I think they're starting. Maybe this is a track that just didn't suit their car at all. But we've seen from the last few performances the level at which Nico Hulkenberg is driving. So to finish only 13th will be a bit of a disappointment. I've gone for a 6 out of 10 as it is. But yeah, I'm sure I'll be disappointed with his finishing position.
Yeah, it's another 6 out of 10 performance that I've gone with for Nico Hulkenberg. You will be disappointed that he's finished in 13th and not inside the points, especially seeing that he had Yuki Tsunoda and the two Aston Martins up ahead of him. But it's one of them where I don't think, like you mentioned, I don't think the track kind of suited Haas down to a T. And It's one of those where Nico Hulkenberg, usually you're expecting him to be in a Q3 shootout and battling for points, but unfortunately he's having to battle for P13. So yeah, it's another driver with another average performance.
And it is Alex Albon up next. I'll finish down in 14th. I've gone for a 6 out of 10. Again, I don't think this is a track that suits Williams at all. He qualified in 13th, finished 14th. It's an average performance. It's not terrible, is it? So it's a 6 out of 10 from me.
Another 6 out of 10, another average performance. Alex Albon qualified 13th, finished 14th. Yeah, many of these drivers outside the top 10 just had very, very average performances, and you can't really displace all of them. They all just had races where they were just kind of running their own races and just doing their own thing. So it's another 6 out of 10.
Next up is Kevin Magnussen, qualified 15th and finished 15th. I've gone for a 5 out of 10. Had to give him slightly lower than Nico Hulkenberg. On a weekend where it's been announced he's leaving Haas. It's disappointing for him that he wasn't close to Hulkenberg, but it's not a bad performance. I think again, like I said, for Nico Hulkenberg, that car it hasn't suited this track, and I think you can see that when they were fighting for points over the last couple of races, and now they're struggling in the midfield.
Couldn't agree with you more. I've also gone with a 5 out of 10 for Kevin Magnussen. You can't give him the same as Nico Hulkenberg, who finished two places, two places between each other. So yeah, it's again, don't think the track really suited the Haas, and it was a race that Kevin Magnussen had to endure and be well outside the point. So yeah, 5 out of 10.
And next up is Valtteri Bottas, qualified up in 12th and finished 16th. I've actually gone for a 6 out of 10 for Valtteri Bottas. I think given that car, he's done a very good job to qualify up in 12th. He's had a good effort. He's always going to get overtaken by Perez and Russell. So that's two places immediately. And then that Sauber is the slowest car. In the second slowest car, should we say. So what is he going to do? What is he going to do from there? So it's unlucky for him. But a good effort from Valtteri Bottas.
I've gone with a 5 out of 10. I think it's another performance where no matter where you qualify in that Sauber car, you're obviously going to go backwards, and it's a performance that just shows how bad the Sauber car is. He's not going anywhere. If anywhere, he's going backwards. Qualifying it up in P12, very good job, but it's got to be mentioned that all the kind of the main event is the Sunday, so you can't put all eggs in one basket. You kind of have to dip your toes in one basket and dip your toes in the other basket. And I think the Sauber guys, especially in Valtteri Bottas's side, kind of were more focused on the qualifying aspect, because if you can remember last season in Hungary, I believe the two Alpha Romeos when they were back then were in Q3. So let's not forget that. And I think as the Sauber as the state team, they've essentially gone backwards. So not to take away from his qualifying performance, because it was very good, but he's always going to go backwards. So I think it was pretty mediocre. So I've settled with a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, that they had a great race there last season, didn't they? Where they both qualified up in top 6, I think it was in the end. Logan Sargent up next, qualified in 14th and finished 17th. Gone for a 5 out of 10. I had to give him slightly lower than Alex Albon. But again, he's qualified 14th. You take Perez and Russell in front of them, that's already 16th. So he's only lost one extra place if you look at it that way. So it's not a bad effort at all. But again, I think it's a matter of too little, too late. So it's a 5 out of 10 from Logan Sargent.
Another one that we agree on. It's another 5 out of 10. This race for Logan Sargent, it's qualifying is good, but like we mentioned at the start of the episode, he's kind of had 5 drivers who were unprepared when the track was at his best. So he kind of sailed through to Q2. And then in the race, he's going to lose positions. He's not Formula One pedigree. He's not the driver that Williams would have wanted him to be when he signed in Formula One. Yeah, 5 out of 10.
You say that, I will just mention he's outqualified a Red Bull on 8 occasions this season as Logan Sargent.
I've seen that statistic, but come on, it's Sergio Perez we're talking about. This guy, ever since ever since he signed at Red Bull, his form's been up and down and up and down and up and down. And at the moment, it's just plain sailing down. Apart from this race where he's finished in seventh. So you're right, but in a very rare scenario, because I don't think you'd be talking about Max Verstappen in this case. You're talking about Sergio Perez. So the statistic is valid, but also invalid at the same time, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, it's a little feather for the cap of Logan Sargent, but it in the grand scheme of things, it's irrelevant. He's been outqualified by his teammate in every single race this season. So moving on now to Esteban Ocon. I don't even have to, not even going to go into any depth here. Alpine have been absolutely washed this weekend, so I've gone for a 4 out of 10.
Yeah, I don't think I wanna delve into it a little bit more. I mean, the chance that they had to make it through to Q2, they completely bottled it. And they weren't on track when the track was at its grippiest. So they've only gotten themselves to blame. Esteban Ocon 4 out of 10.
Yeah, Guan Yu Zhou up next, and I've gone for a 4 out of 10. He's qualified in 18th and finished 19th. He hasn't beaten a single driver. And yeah, it's a 4 out of 10. It's shocking. Again, another driver who I think he won't be seeing at the end past this season. So yeah, it's just not good enough.
Yeah, 4 out of 10 as well. You can't really say more. He's had a bog standard qualifying for his standards. And he's finished as the last runner essentially because Pierre Gasly retired. So yeah, 4 out of 10.
Yeah, speaking of Pierre Gasly, qualified in dead last and did not finish the race. I've given him a 4 out of 10 on the basis that I think he was actually beating Esteban Ocon before he retired, but I can't give him higher than him because he didn't finish the race. So it's 4 out of 10.
Yeah, and I'll agree on the final one with you as well. It's a 4 out of 10. It's what does Pierre Gasly have to do to get some good luck? You think about it. Silverstone retired, Hungary retired. Are we going to see him retire in Belgium? Is that a star prediction that I need to have? I don't know, but yeah, it's a 4 out of 10. Pierre Gasly's just had torrid luck recently, and it doesn't look like it's turning. Maybe he can return to form at Belgium, where obviously one of his best friends lost his life. Maybe he can do it for Antoine Hubert, and get some points in his name. But at the moment, Alpine just don't look good at all. They've gone backwards ever since. I mean, the rest of the midfield have started to pick up. So yeah, 4 out of 10. Torrid luck and retires from another race.
So talking of star predictions, do you want to review yours for this weekend?
We're reviewing this for Hungary. We're looking back, aren't we? So let's look back. I did say a safety car as one of my star predictions. I don't know how it's not happened. And I said Alpine points, and I was hopeful when I saw Q1, 9th and 10th for Alpine. I was buzzing, and then everybody started to get quicker and quicker. So just yeah, you probably understand my feeling, don't you?
Yeah, so I had Alex Albon points, and he was a very long way for them. But I did have less than 4 DNFs, and there was just the one, so I'll take a point for that. Moving on now to qualifying. Yet again, as the story of my season has been, I've got 4 of the 5 drivers correct, just in a completely wrong order. I said Hamilton, Verstappen, Russell, Norris, and Piastri, and the actual order was, of course, Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, Sainz, and Hamilton. So again, you swap out George Russell for Carlos Sainz, and I've got the 5 drivers correct. They're just completely wrong order.
So is that a 0 out of 5?
It is a massive 0 out of 5.
Okay. I've gained 1 point back because I did correctly predict Lando Norris to be on pole position. And fun fact, to one of the TikTok viewers that thought I was completely that I don't watch F1 at all with my qualifying predictions. Suck it. The Italian fan can suck it because he said I had no knowledge whatsoever. I predicted Lando Norris to get on pole position, Max Verstappen in second, Carlos Sainz, okay, maybe a bit ambitious in third, but he was fourth. Lewis Hamilton, okay, maybe a bit ambitious in fourth because he was actually fifth. But come on, don't discredit me that much. I do have decent Formula One knowledge, and I predicted Lando Norris correctly, so it's not all bad.
Anyway, rant over. Moving on now to the race, and again, I got a big fat 0 out of 5. I had Verstappen, Hamilton, Norris, Piastri, and Sainz. So I had Hamilton and Norris in the wrong order. But again, I had 4 out of 5 drivers correct. The only thing I didn't get right was I had the wrong Ferrari. So again, I'm so close, but yet so far.
Right, this Italian fan can generally now eat my dust because I've won the head to head for last weekend because I predicted Charles Leclerc to come fourth, and he did. Thank you very much, Max Verstappen. Thank you very much, Lewis Hamilton. My predictions were Max Verstappen P1, Lewis Hamilton, and Lando Norris to round off a podium. So I wasn't far off with those two. Max Verstappen was just in the bin. And then I predicted Charles Leclerc in fourth, which he did get, and I predicted Carlos Sainz in fifth, which he should have got with that Max Verstappen penalty if it ever comes in place. So I did win the head to head with 2 out of 12. It was a tough race to predict, a tough race to call, but I'm still taking it. It's still points. It's still points on the board.
And let's have a look ahead to Belgium this weekend. So for my 2-star predictions, I've gone for double V-carb points. They've looked good recently. Yuki Tsunoda is doing a phenomenal job, and Daniel Ricciardo's been thereabouts for the last few races. And then for my other one, I've gone for Hulkenberg to be in the top 10 in qualifying.
Right, for my 2 star predictions, I've gone with 3 DNFs and I've gone with Perez in the top five. I'm going to go with the top five in the race purely on the basis that it is rumored that Max Verstappen is taking a fresh new engine. So if he does start at the back of the grid, I think Sergio Perez might have a sneaky chance of getting into the top five. That's all I'm saying.
And then for the race, I've gone for Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri on the front row. Gone George Russell in third, Charles Leclerc fourth, and Lewis Hamilton fifth. And then for the race, I've gone for Norris, followed by Piastri again. And then I've gone for Hamilton in third, Russell in fourth. And I've gone for Max Verstappen in fifth, because as far as I'm aware, it's only going to take a 10-place grid penalty. It's not going to be a back of the grid or pit lane start for Verstappen. It's just going to be a 10-place grid penalty.
So I think I've gone optimistic with this prediction for Sergio Perez because when I'm looking right now at my qualifying and my race predictions, I'm kind of very stuck. For qualifying, I've gone for Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri to occupy the front row of the grid. I've gone with Lewis Hamilton in third, Charles Leclerc in fourth, and then Sergio Perez to claim fifth place in qualifying. And then in the race, I see Lando Norris winning the race with Oscar Piastri in second, Charles Leclerc in third. I believe I want to say Lewis Hamilton gets fourth, and then Sergio Perez keeps his fifth place. But that all depends on the torpedo that is Max Verstappen. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. On to our little Callum's corner, which is Adrian's F2 and F3 corner. A very much exciting weekend in Formula 2 and Formula 3. But let's begin with Formula 2. Paul Aron looked to be going back to his consistent ways with pole position. But he completely went out the window. After that, he only managed sixth place in the sprint race, and then he crashed out in the feature race. But let's have a look at qualifying as an overall. So Paul Aron, like I said, did get pole position with Enzo Fittipaldi and Isaac Hadjar in the top three. Gabriel Bortoleto, Victor Martins, Dennis Hauger, Kimi Antonelli, Zane Maloney, Kush Miney, and Richard Verschoor rounding off the top 10. It was actually Kush Miney who inherited the sprint race victory after I believe Richard Verschoor got himself disqualified due to technical breach. So Victor Martins moved up to second, and Isaac Hadjar inherited third, with Dennis Hauger, Franco Colapinto, Paul Aron, Taylor Barnard, and Juan Manuel Correa running off the points finishes. And in the feature race, it was actually Kimi Antonelli who impressed, getting himself another race victory and 26 valuable points, with Victor Martins getting back-to-back P2 finishes. Richard Verschoor making up from his earlier mistake in the weekend in the sprint race to finish P3, with Gabriel Bortoleto, Enzo Fittipaldi, Dennis Hauger, Kushmini, Rutoma Miata, Taylor Barnard, and Rafael Villa Gomez rounding off the points. And if you actually do look at the point standings, Isaac Hadjar has pulled away by 2 points in the standings, with Paul Aaron only gaining 5 points. Gabriel Bortoleto has closed the gap in P3. He's only 12 points behind Paul Aaron. Zane Maloney gained no points and he continues to fall down the order. And Franco Colapinto has made up 4 points on Zane Maloney and is now only 5 points away from the fourth place man. Kimi Antonelli gaining himself 26 points, doing no harm whatsoever. Another race victory, closing the gap to the top 5. He's only 11 points behind Colapinto. He moves ahead of Jack Crawford, who gained no points from that weekend. Dennis Hauger lost a place because of Kimi Antonelli gaining 2. But he's only 6 points behind Kimi Antonelli. Kushmini is only 11 points behind Kimi Antonelli in 9th, and then Enzo Fittipaldi rounds off the top 10. If you look there, Ethan, the disparity between the top 2 is now 18 points in Isaac Hadjar's favour. Is the tide slowly starting to change in Isaac Hadjar's favour? Do you think that Paul Aaron is finally showing a few signs of weakness, maybe?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the top runners in Formula 2 had a bit of a off weekend, didn't they, really? Only 7 points for Isaac Hadjar. Obviously, got the podium in the sprint race. And in the feature race, apart from Bortoleto, none of the top 5 in the championship got any points. Well, Paul Aaron got 2 points. Nobody else got points. So, we've got 5 races still to go. I still think it's quite open. I think any of those top 4 or 5 still has a realistic shot. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out. I think it'll go right down to the wire in Abu Dhabi, though.
Yeah, I was gonna touch upon there again. You say any of the top 4/top 5. Does Kimi Antonelli have a shot at this? He's if my maths serves me right, and it usually is off, he's only 55 points away from Isaac Hadjar, which technically, if you're winning a feature race every week and the rest of the top 5 aren't scoring any points, you're closing the gap on them. He's gained another race victory, another important race victory. And he's only, like I say, he's only 11 points behind Franco Colapinto in 5th. So he's slowly starting to gain on the top 5. And is he just trying to prove himself and into the Formula One teams that he can actually do it?
Well, it was a stunning victory last weekend in Hungary for the feature race. He made up a lot of positions, some cracking overtakes because he was a bit on the back foot with how it worked out when he had to fight his way through the field. So a very good effort from him. Maybe I think he's a little bit too far off. It's possible, but essentially he has to be flawless between now and the end of the season. And of course, anything can happen. He just needs one bad weekend and it's pretty much over, really. So it's still on, but he wouldn't be my favourite for the championship.
Now into Formula 3 action, and we saw Lawrence Van Hoopen claim pole position ahead of his ART teammate Nikola Tolov and Leonardo Fornaroli in 3rd. Noel Leon and Santiago Ramos 4th and 5th. Joshua Dufek and Luke Browning were set to be 6th and 7th, but Dufek was disqualified due to a technical breach, and Browning had his lap time deleted, which promoted Sami Megatunov to 6th, Tim Tramnitz to 7th, Christian Mantle to 8th, Callum Voisin to 9th. The longest name ever in Formula 3 history, I believe, Tsanopol Ifrapavasak. I tried that, and I think that was okay. He made it up to 10th due to those two being cut from qualifying. Nikita Bedrin in the other AIX in 11th, and Dino Beganovic in the Prema in 12th. It was Dino Beganovic that did start the feature the sprint race on pole position, but it was an AIX 1-2 with Nikita Bedrin taking the win and Tsanopol Ifra Pavasak taking 2nd place with Dino Beganovic in 3rd. Tim Tramnitz Christian Mantle, Callum Boyce, and Leonardo Fornaroli, Luke Browning, Lawrence Van Hoopen, and Sammy Megatunov rounded up with points. In the feature race, Nikola Tsolov gained his third victory of the season to win the feature race, with Noel Leon, Leonardo Fornaroli rounding off the podium places, with Christian Mantle, Santiago Ramos, Callum Boyce, and Nikita Bedrin, Oliver Gerfer, Dino Beganovic, and Mari Boyer rounding off the points. In this championship, it's the same again. The top three gained 0 to no points. It was only Luke Browning that gained 3 points. Leonardo Fornaroli made himself put himself back into the picture, gaining 19 points. Christian Mantle gained a huge haul of points as well with 19. Dino Beganovic gained 10. Oliver Gerfer only 4. Nikola Tsolov shows that he's in it to win it, gaining 25 from the feature race victory. And then Tim Tramnitz in 9th and Lawrence Van Hoopen in 10th in the point standings, gaining 7 and 4 points respectively last weekend in Hungary. The top three, very shaky weekend in Formula 3.
Absolutely, a combined 3 points for all of them. So it's really closed things up, hasn't it? Fornaroli is now just 7 points off the championship lead. Even Mansell, back down in 5th, is only 22 points behind. There's 2 races to go. This could be a very, very interesting end to the Formula 3 season, because you could make a legitimate argument for 7 drivers who are looking to win the championship.
If you had £1,000 and you could place it on one of the drivers, who would you place it on? Who your bets on?
That's a difficult question. I've got a sneaking suspicion Fornaroli could do something there. 7 points off. He's been very consistent in each of the races throughout each weekend, and I think that's could prove dividends. Whereas you look at some of the drivers, like top 3 didn't get any points this weekend, basically. Whereas that sort of consistency could be what sees him over the line. So we'll have to wait and see, but who knows? But that is all we've got time for on this week's episode of On The Grid Podcast. Thank you, Adrian, for joining me today. We will be back next week, where we will be looking back at our wash predictions for the Belgian Grand Prix and reviewing the race as a whole. Thank you all for listening. Make sure you engage in our socials over on Instagram, on TikTok, all of that good stuff. And we'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.